Hey guys, welcome to week 4. This week's agenda is focusing on units 27 of the textbook and the state building code that's associated with it. So unit 27 focuses on decks, so this is what we'll be focusing on learning about this week, how it's supported, how it's anchored into the house, how and why handrails and guardrails are important. And then we will dive into a little bit about the deck building code. So the state of Wisconsin has its own specific code language just on decks. So I will teach you guys how to go in there and figure out information for that. And your assignments for the week are as follows. So we're going to read the unit, so unit 27 of the textbook, which is about the decks. We're going to watch that short video inside called Why Do Decks Collapse? And we're going to answer some questions based on that short video. And then we have an assignment just based on the deck code. So we'll click on that assignment link and then we'll answer the questions associated with that. All right, so I will go into your week 4 folder here. So here's the first assignment, why do decks collapse? There's just 6 questions on that. And then with the deck code assignment, that's our second part of the assignments for the week. And then here's of course the video for that. Now, this is a pretty short video and it's going to explain and give you guys an idea of, you know, the potential dangers of building decks. So if you've probably been in any home improvement store or watched any sort of television, you know, there's, you know, tons of, I guess, TV shows and people out there, you know, telling everybody and their grandma that they can build anything in the world and it's easy, right? You watch a show and a half hour later they got this ginormous deck built and there was never any problems and it didn't take any time. And you know, the reality is, guys, most people can't do this kind of stuff. All right, I mean, you do have to actually know something. I mean, you can't just, you know, pick up a hammer and just start. I mean, it's not that easy. So there's been many decks around this country that have actually collapsed because of a bunch of hacks and do-it-yourselfers that don't know what the heck they're doing. All right. And then secondly, how in the world can you build something without even knowing what the rules and regulations are for doing so, right? I mean, there's actually building code associated with doing any sort of building in the state of Wisconsin and for any state, you know, for that matter. So the second part of the assignment is going to be based on, you know, understanding our code. And so this is where I will do some demonstrating on how to actually access that information, all right? So first thing we want to do is I put a link in our plans folder here. And there's going to be a link for the building code site. So what I want you guys to do is go in there, and this is how we'll access it. We'll just click on this link. And what it's going to do is it's going to take us to the State of Wisconsin Building Code site, which is the Department of Safety and Professional Services. So in order to access our code, the first step would be we have to get into our code, which is going to be 1 and 2 family. So we got to go to this tab here called Programs. We're going to hit A to Z, program list, and we're going to scroll down and we're going to look for 1 and 2 family uniform dwelling code. So that's our state residential building code. We'll click into it, and that's going to take us into the landing page. Now, what I'll do to get into our code is I'm going to go over to the right-hand side, and I'm going to hit Administrative Rules and Statutes. Boom. So here we are, and I want to be in Uniform Dwelling Code. So this is our building code site, but I want to be in our code. So of course there's 1,000 steps to get to it. So just refer to this video if you get hung up. So now what I want to tell you guys is first of all, if we wanted to just know basic construction standards, this is what we would do. So let me just go back. We want to be in SPS 321. So that's going to give us all of our general construction code language. So for example, it all starts right here. Loads of materials, drainage, footings. So for example, if I wanted to know what our minimum size for a footing would be, I could click into that and I could go and I could start looking for stuff. Now, what is our goal for looking at building code? It isn't to memorize every single thing. If you guys don't know, this is a good way for you guys to find out an answer to something, right? So if I wanted to know something, for instance, on a deck footing, or just a footing just in general, I could go there, right? So soil bearing capacity, all of that, column or pier footings, trench footings. So here, size and type, continuous footings. The minimum width of the footing on each side of a foundation wall shall measure at least 4 inches wider than the wall. So for example, if I am pouring an 8-inch foundation wall, what would be the minimum width of my footing? Well, would it be 8 inches? Would it be 4 inches and 4 inches? So that would be 16 inches, right? So if I needed if I was pouring a 8-inch thick foundation wall, the footing would be at least 16 inches, right? And then the depth, which would be this way, would be a minimum of 8 inches, okay? So remember that. So when we're looking at foundation plans and things like that, and I'm not even talking about decks right now, but if you see a 8-inch wall, because our building code says, well, I need to be 4 inches wider on each side where the wall's sitting on my footing. So that means it's 16 inches, right? So if it was a 10-inch wall, I would have to add another 8 inches to that. So that would be 18 inches. And then the thickness is always going to be 8 inches nominal, okay? So that would be that. Now, how about a deck footing? So this is what you guys should really know. A column or a pier footing of any kind, even if it's inside the house, has to measure at least 2 feet by 2 feet. And then the depth of it needs to be 1 foot or 12 inches. So 2 by 2 by 1 is a real common size for a pier footing or a post column or a post pad of any kind, all right? Now, you can go in through here and you can go all the way down. So basically, as you go through all this, if I wanted to know anything about, my foundation walls, I could go into this section. Floors, decks. Now, what I will say is this. Our state code is going to have an appendix or its own set of code language just based on deck building. And so what you guys want to do is, if you want to know anything about basic decks, go into this right here. We have Appendix B. So I'm going to click into Appendix B. And that's going to take us into something called our deck code, okay? It's all going to just reference decks. So the assignment is going to be based on these sets of rules and regulations. So if we start scrolling down, we're going to see, there's general requirements for decks, and we're going to start out with information about the footings and the post connections and things like that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you every little nugget of information. This is here to give you a guide and a way to start picking out information. So Appendix B is where we're at. Here we have a footing size for, specific lengths and dimensions of decks. Okay. Here we're going to have the 3 different ways that a footing can be actually poured for building a deck. Gone are the days of digging a hole and putting a little bitty flat piece of cookie, we call them in the trade, at the bottom of the hole and putting a post on it. We can't do that anymore. We have to do one of these three methods, and most of the time guys are doing this one. They're digging a hole, they're pouring it full of concrete as per the size that's needed based on that table that we just looked at, and then they're doing an anchor of some sort in it. These are the other two ways. Here we got post to beam connections, we got maximum post height. So if I'm using a 4x4 post, I can only be up in the air 6 feet. If I'm any higher than that, I got to go to the next size or dimensional post, which is either a 4x6 or a 6x6. All right. We got some post to beam connections. Here's some prohibited things. All right. So I mean, let's just scroll through here. I mean, you're going to get into joist spans and how to, nail girders and beams together. Okay, so as you keep going through here, you're going to get into hangers, you're going to get into joists, you're going to get into connections, you're going to get into prohibited ledger attachments, which is what you watched on that video. That's one of the most important attachments that you will have for a deck. It's going to tell you that you cannot attach a ledger to a cantilevered, overhang like this on a house unless it has some sort of a foundation underneath it, or in this case you'd have to add another beam. Here there's another one. You can't just go into a bunch of brick veneer. It should make sense, but for the do-it-yourselfer or the hack that doesn't know anything and it doesn't even know that we have a state building code or it doesn't exist, has never looked for it, wouldn't know any of this kind of stuff. All right, so then you got ledger board, spacing, what you can use and can't use. And then it's going to get into, some of the other important things down the line here. Guardrails, things for your stairs. So guardrails, handrails, spacing requirements for your stairs, minimum rises and tread dimensions and things like that. Okay, so as you guys get familiar with this, know that this is a place that you're going to go to find basic information. You're not going to just guess and go, well, I think this is good enough, or I think I can have a 8.5 inch rise. Well, if you know anything about carpentry and basic building codes, you're going to know that that's not true. The maximum rise that we can have in our state of Wisconsin is 8 inches. The minimum depth for a tread, the part that you stand on, is going to be 9 inches. All right, so some of these things you're gonna end up remembering and knowing, as you get more seasoned with this stuff and as you learn more. But this is just our basic stair language within this Appendix B for decks. Now, stair code language is also going to apply for any stair that you do, so inside the house as well. So that type of information is always going to be the same. So this is our state building code. This is how we're going to pick out information. So the easiest way for you guys to do this is just, read the question and then look in Appendix B. And I'm pretty sure that I made everything kind of in a logical order, So you're just going to scroll down and find the information and select the best answer, okay? And what you'll find is a lot of times it makes sense, makes common sense. But sometimes, the code language can be tricky to interpret. So, if you get hung up, use the discussion board and maybe pose a question, and maybe I will see it and I can help you, or a fellow student, right? So, for this week's work, let's just focus on understanding kind of the basic components and what's important with the decks and how to frame it, but then also understand that there's important code language that goes along with it, as with anything that you build. Now, do you guys need to memorize code? Well, you should memorize some of the most important ones, but if you're hung up on something, if you're out, happen to be out in the field, knowing how to go to our state building code is important, and you can do that right on the computer, or you can have a hard copy of it. But keep in mind, you can't just guess. When you're out in the field, you have to make a decision based on, certain information, right? If you don't know something, you're going to need to reference the building code to figure it out. You don't just make crap up as you go and say, oh, I think that's good enough, because guess what? If you're in any sort of city or area where there's building inspectors, they're going to check this kind of stuff, right? They're not just going to let something blatantly wrong go, and then they're going to make you fix it. All right, so then you just wasted a whole bunch of time because you were too lazy to go and look up a building code or make a phone call to the inspection department, all right, to actually answer your question. All right, so, take your time, guys, go over this. I know it's not glamorous, to go into the building code and look at things, but trust me, it's important. It's an important skill to know, and it's important just to know how to access it, okay? So, as always, any questions, get a hold of me, use the discussion board, email me or call me, and we will see you soon.